Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Okay, good morning, good morning. It is a beautiful morning outside of my Jerusalem window. The window is shut, so I'm not hearing the sounds of bombs. I'm not hearing the sounds of sirens. And I must tell you, I'm always grateful to do this show, and I'm always grateful to listen, to look in and see who's listening in. And for some reason, which we may explore together today, I am particularly grateful to see the audience listening in at this very important Jewish time in history. So let me say good morning to my friends in the U.S., Eretz Israel, of course, is listening in. Australia, Canada is with us today. The U.K., France, the Netherlands. Good morning, Turkey. I hope we're friends today. Finland is listening in. Argentina, Malawi. Haven't seen Malawi in a while. Nigeria is listening in, and our friends in Malta. Those of you who know us, those of you who love us, those of us who care about what is going on in the Jewish state, indeed, as a paradigm for what is going on in the hearts of the world, know that we are under siege. Make no mistake about it. This was once again an unprovoked, unsolicited, but sadly not unexpected new explosion of Muslim rage, anger, twisted behavior. And once again, as we try to appease those in the West who look at us, who can find no good in Israeli behavior, no good in Israeli reaction, nothing. We're stuck between rocks and hard places. And indeed, I ask all of you to keep your computers tuned today and in the next few days to Israel News Talk Radio, because while the Washington Post will try to misguide you, when the New York Times does its ugly anti-Israel thing, you will get the facts here. It won't always be pretty. The language won't always be very polished and refined, but Israel News Talk Radio will tell you what it is. My name is Andrea Simantov. Lots to explore on the other side.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
Okay, this is Andrea Simantov. Pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. My notes for this show got all messed up. I printed out like 1,000 pages of notes. And instead, guess what? I'm going to be doing it actually from the computer screen, which is never easy. Before we even begin, I do want to dedicate this show. I don't have the Hebrew names in front of me, but I will say that this show is dedicated to the refuah shalema of my dear friend Barbara Bas Sarah, that she should just heal and be well, and to the continued strength of her loving son Matthew, who is by her side at this very trying time. So we wish Barbara a refuah shalema. We also wish refuah shalema to all the beloved, holy Israelis who have been injured by the, oh my gosh, is it 1,600 missiles? 2,000 missiles that have fallen on besieged Israel? to date, to moment. I was away for many days. I always tend, because I'm from New York, I say, well, I was upstate. I wasn't upstate. I was up Israel. I was up by the Lebanese border. I was as far north as you could go to an area called Achziv, the Achziv beach, right beneath Rosh HaNikra. A lot of army present. And it was very beautiful. And on Motzi Shabbos, Saturday night, we were away from Thursday until Monday. And on Saturday night, the trailer camp emptied out. And suddenly the husband and I were alone. It was crazy. For me, it was a little bit eerie. I listened to a lot of murder mystery podcasts, so I had TMI. But he thought it was great. And the dog was running around free, and we were alone. And it reminded me that Shavuot is coming up. And it made me think of the Midbar, the desert, this pictorial perspective of this barren and desolate wilderness. Although we were actually on the beach, the open ocean, it was all ours. The silence of the hills versus the beach. We could hear animals in the background. I didn't know what they were. But, it reminded me of the Midah of Shavuot, which is the, the Festival of Weeks? What do they call it? I don't know what it's called in the non-Jewish world, the Shavuot. And Rabbi Twersky of blessed memory, he just passed away, in his book, Living Each Week, he implores us. And there's a lot of connectedness in what we're talking about today. We're talking about the arrogance of both sides, being right. Right versus might, or right is might. Don't confuse, according to Rabbi Twersky, don't confuse humility with feelings of inadequacy or inferiority. Humility may be, best defined by connecting it or counteracting it with its polar opposite. What's the opposite of humility? Vanity. Vanity, that feeling of self-praise where one feels that one has achieved great things and is deserving of recognition and reward. Humility, on the other hand, is the feeling that, considering our potential, we haven't even achieved anything yet, and we can do more. We must do more. Vanity can lead to resting on one's laurels, and therefore doing nothing. Humility is stimulating because it demands a greater performance of ourselves. Here especially, this is the holiday of converts. I know we have people who are what we call Jews by choice, who listen in, who are part of our orbit. They're in my neighborhood, they're in my home, they're in my children's schools. True, righteous individuals who chose to cleave to the Jewish people by abandoning their previous religious beliefs. We've talked, it's not about today's show, we've talked about the missionary phenomenon where people claim to live Jewish lives, except they also accept the value and presence of Jesus Christ. Not Jewish. Conversion is the complete letting go, stepping into the desert, putting your arms up and saying, I am here. Shavuot offers an opportunity. Here I'm talking to the Jewish boys and girls listening in, for all of us to somehow convert, to bring ourselves closer to God. For every individual, every single one of us, this is accomplished according to different plans. I don't know. Your trials are not my trials. Embracing more of the Torah, more of the statutes, being more conscientious of adhering to or observing mitzvahs that we know that we've neglected. We know we haven't done with the full kavanah, the devotion, maybe because they were inconvenient. Okay, here's the confession, the confessional. Taking personal account of areas in which we can improve ourselves as Jews. It's an opportunity to take a page out of the book of Ruth and saying, hey, Ruth, me too. I too want to become a more accomplished, fulfilled member of Klal Yisrael, the congregation of Israel. We have an opportunity to cultivate a little bit of that inner Ruth inside of us. And it's not even hard. We've been given the green passport. We only need to attempt to return to Torah within the measure of the eye of a needle. God will open up that small space and bring us into a greater realm of return. Talking about humility, okay. Oh, I just realized I really should keep my eye on the clock here, okay. If the engineer breaks in at any point and starts screaming, Andrea, we know that I've been off. Okay. I want to address my liberal Jewish friends, my friends who have been in contact with me, my friends who said, oh, Andrea, please be safe. We care so much about you. We're watching. We care. God should bless Israel. You know, talking about humility, I actually read an article by, you'll have to correct me because I'm not looking at my notes now, by Ali Hirsi. Anybody remember Ali Hirsi? Is it Hirsi Ali? She is the Somalian activist. She escaped from a brutal arranged marriage in Somalia. She's a great advocate stopping women, female genital mutilation. She is a spokeswoman for women and human rights everywhere. And she wrote an article about tribe mentality, the mentality of those who adhere to a way of thinking to the point of blindness where we lose all objectivity, that to walk lockstep with a belief system. I know that many of us on the conservative right did that. I also often mentioned here on this statement, on the station before the American election, that I could be persona non grata here because I was not a Donald Trump groupie. Donald Trump pained me. Donald Trump embarrassed me. Donald Trump made me cringe. It was so much that was cringe-worthy and lacking in refinement that I felt that the station of President of the United States could have done with a little more class and a little less crass. Nevertheless, I will always, always, always be grateful to what he brought forth, the vision of his understanding of Israel's needs. And I don't care, and I certainly didn't care when our enemies were spewing what his real motivation was. It was like, well, he doesn't care about Israel. I didn't care. I knew that I slept safely at night with Donald Trump in the White House, along with Benjamin Netanyahu in the Prime Minister's residence. We slept safely. Did I like him? No. Was I able to say the Republicans are blindly walking lockstep, and every time one took exemption to something that was being emanated from the president's podium, they were slandered? Well, I got to tell you, the same thing in the Democratic Party. They could do no wrong. There are absolute enemies of Israel there, taking front and center there, and everything was wonderful. Everything was great. Well, I got to tell you something. I didn't hear any of my Democrat voting friends during the presidential elections say, you know what, Andrea and company? We have to hold our nose when we vote for Joe Biden. We have to hold our nose because it all stinks, but we don't like America the way it is, and we cannot vote for Donald Trump, and on and on and on and on. We love Israel. None of you were able to say, at least it didn't come across my desk, we know what we are doing. We are choosing to remain ignorant to what this might do to Israel as we cast our votes. Well, let me tell you what your votes did without your humility. The money you're sending, the $300+ billion you send, it is less landing in the streets of Hadera, directly murdered a child last night in his bed, killed a precious Israeli soldier, buses, we are under siege, we are under fire. And you liberal American Jews who voted Biden into office, and maybe righteously, maybe correctly for your own consciences, did it, but without even prefacing it with the words, "I'm sorry, we're ready, but we understand." They didn't have money for vaccines, but they have money to bomb my grandchildren on their ways to school. Recognize culpability. My name is Andrea Simantov. Guess what? I have more to say on the other side.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with Love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with Love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back. Andrea Simantov, pull up a chair. I'm trying to arrange these notes. Here we go. Got some nice notes here. Again, I'm not lambasting those. I understand that people have to vote according to their conscience. Just somehow, like Ali Hirsi says, I love how she said, at least say, I do not walk lockstep. I only had one vote. But let me cast my vote with humility, not with arrogance. That's the whole thing. It's something that we've lost. We've lost this skill. I remember I had a discussion with a grandson the other day who said something that was really very not becoming, very, in my opinion, not okay, not rife with respect, or as we say, derech eretz. And when I said to him, when I challenged him, he got defensive. And finally I said to him, how about saying, I'm sorry? And I really, he comes from a family where I'm sorry doesn't really come naturally. It was very, very nice to hear him say. All right, I'd like to tell you a little bit what it is like to live here. Received a call the other night from my son, an adult son, who is in what we call miluim. Miluim, here the paper's all crackling here, papers, getting organized. Miluim is the reserve unit of the army. And the miluim is really the Israeli army. We see cute pictures of young boys, 18 to 21-year-olds, but the ones who are really truthfully in Israel, you're in the army for, I don't know, let me see, if they're 18 to 38, you're in the army at least 20 years. Your first 3 years, as you become a young soldier, you're really training for a lifetime of soldiering. This is our reality. So I have a son who's already 30 years old. He was in I'm losing the English. It's not being replaced with anything. He was in a fighting unit. Fighting. I couldn't come up with the word fighting. And it was 10:30 at night, and I was sleeping. At 10:30. I go to bed very, very early. I get up very early. But these days of war, I also get up particularly early because I need my rest. I need my rest because we could be called into the bomb shelter at any time, and I do not wake well. I don't get up well when being shaken awake in an emergency to the sounds of sirens. Anyway, he called to tell me, to find out how both Ronnie and I were doing. Were we okay? We live in a very old building. The bomb shelter is four flights beneath us. We made a decision that unless we have to go into the bomb shelter, we prefer to shelter in the hallways where there are no windows for breaking glass. You have to think these things through. Different reality. And then I said to him, because I was frightened, I heard that Benny Gantz had called up 500,000 troops. And I said to my son, have you been called? And he said, no, I haven't been called yet. I don't think I'll be called. My son owns a business. He owns a small business and he employs about 10 people. And again, it's the eggshells a mom walks on. And I did not say to him, you could be exempt. You could get out of this. You do not have to go in. And it was as if before I even asked the question, he said to me, I will not ask for an exemption, Mom. If called up, I will go. And that was the whole conversation. There are some Israeli mothers, I imagine, who would say, think about it. You don't have to. Let me tell you what it feels like to be an Israeli mother. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You want your words to have meaning. You want your words to not be self-serving. But every time we talk to our children, aren't we serving our own selves? And so I said to him, I'm proud of your decisions. Good, right, wrong. Let me give you an upbeat, only in Israel moment. I loved this. Let's take a break from a little bit of the morose before we get into our heavy-duty Shavuot stuff that I love so much. I got this note from, I think that Leah Zakan Aharoni has a program on this station. So I don't know if she told this story, but hey, I loved it and you're hearing it from me. So she posted on her Facebook wall that she was at a wedding one evening. Of course, I'm going to extrapolate the things that I like because, hey, it's my show. And this is according to Leah. We were at a wedding tonight, and as we were leaving, we got word that at the adjacent hall at a bar mitzvah boy whose mother had passed away recently. So he was celebrating his bar mitzvah, and the hall itself was empty. So the wedding guests at the wedding that she was attending went over to the hall to dance with him. The security guard, it's an Israeli a constant fixture, the security guard also sent out a WhatsApp message, and people started to stream in from all over. The Magav border guard soldiers, Magan David first responders, Chabad yeshiva students, waiters from the wedding, carloads of random people asking, hey, where's the bar mitzvah? Some people walked in just to leave a check. Others danced their feet off. We've seen messages like this on Facebook, but it was the first time they had seen something like this up close. The atmosphere was electric, pure love. And Andrea will add, yes, and only in Israel moment. Now, back to reality. I just wanted to pepper it because I like to keep it upbeat. But again, those of you listening in from Finland, from Malawi, from Nigeria, from England, from Canada, from the US, from South America, I ask you, with 1,600 minimum, maybe there's more. I shut off my siren alert. Do you know of any country in the world that would put up with these war crimes and at the same time have to kick its PR company into high gear and defend itself before self-righteous international media for the crime, the chutzpah, the unmitigated gall of fighting back? It's a hoax. The Palestinian claim that Al-Aqsa is under Israeli siege and under Israeli attack. I will tell you now, it is a blatant lie. Lies can have wings. Lies can have feet. You know what? The reason Al-Aqsa Mosque is available for Muslim prayer, for Arab worship, is because it has been maintained, not by the Waqf, but by Israeli presence, Israeli security, and indeed danger to the lives of Israeli police and soldiers. That is what I want to. Oh, so apparently, just as we knew, let me just check my time. Let's see what the engineer has to say to me. Uh-oh. All right. Okay. Uh-oh. It's moving on down. So just as we expected, Hamas is offering a ceasefire. Are you now? A ceasefire. Thank you, Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you, the Israeli Knesset. Rejected. I pray they pave your paradise called Gaza and make it a parking lot. Because you will come back. You will rise. You will come back like lice eggs. You will come back like vermin. You will come back and do what you do again. What is it? Again the Arab Spring? It's the end of Ramadan, hijacking my show, that instead of being able to wish you a blessed holiday, I have to say, why? Why is there no one around you refined? I'm silent. Silence in the shock. Silence in the rage. Silence. And yes, I get the same articles you do about Jewish retaliation, ugly Jewish retaliation, unseeming and indeed un-Jewish retaliation in the streets of Bat Yam and in Hulon and in Lod, to order martial law in the streets of Lod, unprecedented in Eretz Israel. Am I proud when Jews act like those who are attacking them? No, I am not. No, I will not defend it. I will put my faith in heaven and know that when this episode is over, when this when the gentleness, when gentility returns, how's the English? It's pretty good. When gentility returns, it will be addressed. One more mention. To those American Jewish parents who have children that are here in Israel now, who have come back to study, who are here to begin summer programs, I beg you, I implore you, do not tell them to come home. Do not tell them that Scarsdale and Westchester and Detroit and the 5 towns and Los Angeles is where a Jew belongs today. Question your own motivation, your own temerity, your own weakness. You've done the right things by sending your children here to learn, to grow, and to hopefully plant roots. Be brave. My name is Andrea Simintov. I'll see you on the other side.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shabbat, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
Okay, my name is Andrea Simintov, and we are back. This is our Devar Torah section. This is my favorite part, my favorite thing. Lots to talk to. By the way, if you have any questions about the show, anything you want to talk to me, any nit you wish to pick, you can write to me at Andrea@IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Happy to engage. And also, if you want to know where any of my material is sourced, I'll make it up and give you an answer. That's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. By the way, the chat room is open. I'm only now noticing. I only signed into it now. I was very tense. Here is a PSA, a public service announcement for those of us living in Israel. So, Shlomo's Animal Farm. Shlomo's Animal Farm is up north. Write to me. I'll send you the email address. I think you can see it at Greenbook. It's a word, greenbook.co.il. And Shlomo of Shlomo's Animal Farm, doesn't this sound like out of the Green Acres television show? So residents of the Gaza border and actually all areas under attack, Shlomo invites all of you to his animal farm for free. It's open daily, of course, no Shabbat, not on Shabbos, and I'm sure it closes early on Friday, but it's open from 10 until 9. And if you want more information, hey, Andrea, how can we get to Shlomo's? Drop me a note. I will tell you. Holy work, holy outreach from a holy brother. All right. Wow. Heavy-duty Shabbos, and we go right into Shavuot. Shavuot was one of those little-known holidays when I was growing up. We knew the biggies. We knew Rosh Hashanah, we knew Yom Kippur, and we knew Pesach. And then there was like this, well, there's something in there, some Jewish-sounding holiday. Then we learned about it, and we thought, hey, cheesecake, much more. So let's talk, first of all, about Bamidbar. So this section of the Torah is called Bamidbar. Bamidbar means in the desert. It's hard for us to imagine, although in our current situation, remember, bombs beside the point, we just came out of a different desert, a COVID desert. And yet for 40 years, the Jews lived in quarantine, in isolation, for 4 decades, They had no occupations. They had no struggles to feed themselves because the man fell from heaven. And and all they had to do, they even had water from the well of Miriam, and Moshe provided them with their sustenance. So what did they do all the time? The apparent answer is that they absorbed themselves in understanding, in studying, in assessing the laws and values of the Torah. Interesting to reflect as we come out of this COVID period. How did we utilize the period? Is there something that we can learn from it? In any event, they had to raise a new generation of people, a generation that would pursue the goal of entering the land of Israel and settling it and creating a more normal Jewish society. Is there such a thing? I don't know. Our rabbis have characterized this generation of the desert as being one of great intelligence. They were very knowledgeable. They had great insights. And yet, it was a generation of a kind of no purpose, because they were doomed. They were doomed from the moment they left Mitzrayim, from Egypt, to die. They wouldn't accomplish the goal that was entrusted to it, to create a new society in Olam Hagoyim, the world of strangers. It was told, this generation, that it would accept the Torah, it would march into the land of Israel, and yet they wouldn't enter. Moses succeeded in having them accept this Torah, but he was unsuccessful in having them merit that entry. In fact, an element of the people would say they not only wanted to go, they wouldn't go forward to the land of Israel, they were willing to retreat and go backwards into the land of Egypt, into the land of affliction and plagues. It's hard for us to imagine this generation, especially since everyone listening to this show now, either live or on podcast, has never known a world where holy Israel hasn't existed. Imagine a generation whose sole task was only to mark time until death, to make room for a new generation. The desert, however, there was something positive to it. The Talmud teaches us that the Torah was given to this generation, that they could live in the desert. If one could relieve oneself of desires, outside pressures, and live as though in some way we're in a desert, then the Torah can really find its home and purpose in the life of that person. The generation of the desert represents to us a kind of double-edged, or even we can say a two-faced society. On one hand, it's negative. because there was a refusal to progress towards an ultimate goal, the land of Israel. Isn't that the goal? And the other, a society that's blessed, free from wants and the pressures, with nothing but the ability to intellectualize Torah into their very beings. In Jewish tradition, the generation of the desert is always represented not so much of a transitional generation, but as a wasted generation, one who has opportunity and ability and does not employ that opportunity to fulfill the opportunity presented, is seen in the eyes of the Torah as wasting one's existence. Indeed, I'm going off script. Those who have an opportunity to study Torah, my goodness, the internet, the plethora of sites accessing brilliant Torah thought that can be aimed at every one of us to wherever we are holding in this world. And instead, we read about the goings and comings of J. Lo and Ben Affleck. Shame on us. The Torah has a prohibition against wasting anything, and certainly time and opportunities. Because of this, we're always troubled when reading these portions of the Torah that will follow for the next few weeks, and this section of the Torah which bears the name of the desert in its title. We're struck with a feeling of pity and sadness that the generation that had the possibility of being the greatest ended up being a wasted generation, dying in the desert, having no home, no opportunity after the great start when they were freed from Mitzrayim. Every generation must be on the watch. It should be a generation it shouldn't be a generation of the desert. We can learn to take advantage of situations which allow us to study Torah, to employ intellectual realism, but we have to also be very aware, be vigilant, that a generation of the desert that doesn't build for the future and doesn't take hold of opportunities will not be remembered as a positive and great generation among the story of the peoples of Israel. We're faced with great challenges, my friends, but we also have incredible opportunities. Our generation must not be remembered as a generation of a desert, but a generation of Jews who helped build the land of Israel and who have helped rebuild the Jewish world wherever Jews exist, which brings us back to Shavuos. May I take a sip of coffee? Yes, Andrea, you may. Okay, said that bracha. The book of Ruth, I'm going to speak quickly here. The book of Ruth was conceived as an ode to loving kindness. Rabbi Zeira says that this scroll tells us nothing of ritual purity, of defilement, of prohibition, or permission. So for what purpose was it written? The study of Ruth and Naomi is an inspiration to all of us, but especially to women and their relationships with one another. What was it about Naomi that so inspired her daughter-in-law to follow her and emulate her ways? Naomi, like her name, was pleasant and beautiful. The Nahal Yosef says she was refined in word and deed. She was generous. And we know that before her flight, she was beloved to the women of Bethlehem, and she never missed an opportunity to engage in acts of kindness. She lent a lot of her own assets. She was devoted. She was a devoted mother who, after the death of her sons, spent the rest of her life redeeming them, clearing their names so that they would not be erased in this world. She was wise. She was insightful with both of her daughters-in-law, knowing when to let go and when to persist. Ruth, beloved Ruth, was born of an incestuous relationship between Lot and his daughter. She is one of these sparks of glory scattered throughout creation who brings kapara, atonement, and bracha to this world. For Ruth, who returned from the fields of Moab as the apex of modesty and goodness, she atones for the sin of immorality. It has been said that Ruth, in one way, is even greater than Abraham. Hashem has to tell Avraham to leave, to lech lecha, but Ruth returns of her own free will. Ruth was a fitting daughter-in-law to Naomi. She was what we call a ger tzedek, a true convert. Naomi taught, and Ruth listened and accepted, na'aseh v'nishma. As a Moabite princess, she had never been to Israel, and yet as a ger tzedek, she returned to her people and land. Like Naomi, Ruth was beautiful and strong. She converted at a time when it was accepted that Moabites could never return. Boaz says to Ruth, "You have made your latest act of chesed greater than the first." By marrying him, an old man, she sacrificed youth and beauty and strength. The sages tell us that Ruth's last act made her a role model for Jews the world over. Shabbat, Shalom, and Chag Sameach.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the israelnewstalkradio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.